Luke chapter 5. We'll deal with that later on, because some of y'all done closed the Bible, ready to go. Hold the door, ushers, amen. Chapter 5. And it came to pass, verse 1, that as the people pressed upon him to hear the word of God, he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw two ships standing by the lake. But the fishermen were gone out of them and were washing their nets. And he entered into one of the ships, which was Simon's, and prayed he that he would thrust out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people out of the ship. Now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, launch out into the deep, and let down your nets for a draught. And Simon answered and said unto him, Master, we have toiled all the night, and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word I will let down the net. And when they had thus done, they enclosed a great multitude of fish, and their net brake. And they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both the ship, so that they began to sink. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. In Satan's arsenal of destruction, he have a tool that can tear down the heart of any believer. That arsenal is not a 9mm or a Glock 45. He has in his tool arsenal, he has a tool that's called failure, that can cause many believers to turn their back and heart on God. Matter of fact, in your walk, in your marriage, in your life, there have been times when you have failed God, failed others, and failed yourself, and you feel like throwing in the towel. But I stop by to encourage at least 10 of y'all here today that if you have faith after failure, God can still fill your ship. I want you to understand that despite where you are, where you've been in life, or your hiccups and let down, if you allow God to take control of your situation, he's able to turn around. You don't have to believe me, but there should be somebody close enough to you, not on the road in front of you or behind you, somebody to let you know that because they kept their hands in the master's hand, God was able to turn midnights in today's troubled water to calm, and a situation that they couldn't work out, God worked it out. I just want you to understand that having faith after failure gives a great breakthrough. Do I have anybody here that can say today that I have let my failures cause me to stop praising God, allow my failure to give up on God? But today is the day that the Lord has made. I'm going to rejoice and be glad. In other words, I'm not going to let my failures stop me from moving forward. And God, my failure is not going to let me move forward. And my failure was trying to stop you on your job. But I wish I had somebody here that said, instead of my failure taking me back a step, my failure going to thrust me forward. Do I have anybody here that said, instead of it making me worse, it's going to make me better? Instead of kicking me out, it's going to bring me back. And do I have anybody here that said, because I failed, I'm better at what I'm doing right now? I wish I had somebody here that said, they should have took me out here, should have killed me, the trap should have kept me in, but because I had God in my life, it bounced me back up, and I'm better now than I once was. Do I have anybody here that glad failure not only take you down, but it can bounce you back up again? I just want to talk to you for a little bit about having faith after failure. Having faith after failure, I'm going to go through the text, but I want you to understand where we are here. You have Peter, that's the second call for Peter as an apostle, a call to follow Jesus. And as we look here, Peter as a skilled fisherman, the Bible, the text teaches Sister Cookie that he fished all night long. I'm fishing all night, nigga, sky, and didn't catch a thing. It seemed like to me, if your craft is fishing, you should know how to fish. If you're a skilled fisherman, it seems like all night, not a couple of hours, like some of us would fish a couple of hours, and we would give up and put up the tackle box and go to Winn-Dixie.
Amen.
Go to the market and get all the fish we want. But there was no Winn-Dixie, no fish market, no crab shack. And they wanted some fish, they had to fish. And get the fish that they wanted. So Peter, Simon Peter, John, and James was out there, other people out there fishing. And the Bible teaches us, Deacon Brian, that they fished all night long. There will be some things that you're going to give so much energy to. So many things in your life, in your ministry, in your life, in your marriage, with your children, some of you have given so much to, and it still seems to fail. Now, some of you go to school, go spend 4 years in school and can't find a job in that profession. You go back another 4 years to change whole profession. It seems like you have failed, but sometimes failure will make you better. Sometimes people look at a failure because this is not my first marriage. May not even be my second marriage, and I don't know if I'm going to do good in the next one, so I'm just going to stand still. This is the last job I had. I got fired. I may get fired. The last time I made a decision, I made a bad decision. But even in the midst of our failures, believers, we must still have faith. Because Satan don't want nothing more than you to quit and give up and throw in the towel. If you give up and quit, you don't have to have faith. Satan has already won the battle. But if you got faith despite where you came from, God can take you to a different destiny. See, where I am right now is not where I'm going. I'm just passing through right here. See, some of you have judged your situation, your life, because of where you are right now. See, the reason I praise and shout to God is not because of where I'm at right now. The reason I have a praise, Sister Willie, is because I know I'm on my way somewhere. I may be in the midst of failure, but the failure is not the end of the story. So, Sister Betty, I still got to praise despite where I am right now. But just stick around for a little while. God is going to turn some stuff around. Do I have anybody here that if you look back on your life, you've been through some dark days, you cried a little bit, but God still dried all your tears. I still got to have faith after my faith. It's nothing more that the world want to see than a believer fail. There's not some folks on your job just waiting for an opportunity to say, where's your God now? Just let him know he's the same place where he woke you and me up this morning. I know we get laid off, but God will make a way out of some way. So I'm not going to trust, and he kind of not going to trust in the boss decision, but I'm going to put my hand in God's hand, and God will work it out. And so Peter, he failed at fishing, but when you look at the text, first he identified him as master, then he later on identified him as Lord. Even though he says master, he's not referring to him as Jesus' master, but yet a person of authority. First of all, when Jesus shows up, in chapter 4, Jesus had done some powerful things that healed folks. And the multitude were following him because of his teaching. And when he arrived at the lake of Tiberias or Gennesaret, the crowd was so pressed upon him that they didn't give him no room. So he had to make a pulpit out of the boat. He had to get off the shore because so many people was around him. And Deacon Johnson, he asked Peter, can I get in your boat and just go back a little piece so I can have some room to teach? And so as he teaching and preaching from a boat, the shore is full of folks. Peter just finished cleaning his nets. Him and James, John, the sons of David, just finished cleaning that nets, and then Jesus on his boat. See, first of all, you need to make sure Jesus is on your boat even after failure. Jesus was on his boat teaching the multitude, and see, God is not going to forsake you even though he's not talking to you. Peter was had Jesus on his boat, but when he finished teaching, he looked at Peter and said, thrust out a little further in the deep. Peter began to tell the Lord, I was out here all night. Did you just see me finish cleaning my nets? I just finished cleaning my nets and we didn't catch anything. But at your word, Master, I'll go out. And what happened here, Deacon Gordon, is that when they went out, they said, caught so many fishes. I know my English teachers don't like that, but it's in the book. So many fishes. Because fish is fluid by itself, and Miss Oil have a fish, you know. I said fishing, but sometimes I say deers, amen, but you know, still a deer, you know. But the Bible said there were so many fishes that it broke their nets, and their boats began to sink. And they had so many fish that not only were they blessed, but they was able to bless somebody else, and the blessing was so great, Sister Given, that everybody both began to sing. See, when you connected to God, God not only bless you, but he bless everybody attached to you. That's why I thank God that I'm attached to Big Mama. Because Big Mama not here, but she still sends some blessing my way. That's why I'm glad I had a praying daddy that even though he's gone, he placed some blessing on me that I may not see till another 10 years from now. That's why it's important that you stay connected to God. Not only will you be blessed, but your children and your children's children be blessed. You cannot give up after failure, but you got to have faith in God. And because he made a pulpit out of a boat, God preached to the folks, and not only were the folks blessed, but people were blessed. First thing I want you to understand today, if we're going to have faith after failure, believers, we got to be committed to a greater call. We got to be committed to a greater call. Some people are satisfied with no fish. Some people are satisfied with just going through the act of fishing and not catching anything. See, a fisherman that loves to fish, he can fish every day of the week and don't catch anything, is satisfied. But you can take another fisherman out there, they out there 5 minutes, and they upset because they ain't caught nothing. Do I have anybody had to go fish with your husband and just say, you're not going to be doing anything else but out here, bugs biting, and it's hot out here, and we're not catching anything, and he's just having a good time? But if we're going to have faith after failure, you got to be committed to a greater call. Look at verse 4 through 7. It says, now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your net for a draught. In other words, you can't stay in shallow water. We got too many believers that want the big fish, but they hanging out where the minnows swim. You can't get big blessings hanging out in minnow water. See, the big fish, they just only swim by the shore, but they're not hanging out there. And see, sometimes God will give you a glimpse of what you can have, but in order for you to have it, you got to have a greater commitment to God. Just coming to church once a month is not a great commitment. Just coming to Bible study every now and then is not a great commitment. But when you make up your mind for God, you're going to live and make up your mind for God. You're going to die. If the door is open and you ain't got nothing else to do, you're going to be in God's house. You want God to get closer to you. As you get close to him, you got to have a greater commitment. If you've been in this church all your life and still haven't came to Bible study one time in your life, you don't have a great commitment to God.
Amen.
I expect an amen for that. But if this is your church, coming to church on Sunday morning will not yield great results. It's good to fill the pew on Sunday morning. But when teaching is going for, see, Jesus told the disciples, go ye therefore and teach all nations. See, we good preaching all the time. Good preaching make you shout your hair out, make you shake your wig off, make you shirt your skirt down. But when you get some teaching, you can go out and change a nation. Tell me and war about a girl that you don't have to live like this. When you get some good teaching, you won't criticize our young boys that have their pants down. You show them that is another way. Do I have anybody here that say, I thank God that I made up my mind for God, I will commit myself, and when I needed him the most, he showed up when I didn't know how I was going to make it, because I was committed to him. He was committed to me. Don't wait till you get too old and can't do nothing. And when I first came, Mother Faison, she said, Pastor, I done got old now. She was still sharp, and as she always she showed up the Bible study. I'm like, I'm underdressed. And she said, Pastor, I got old. I can't do what I used to do. When I could, I did. And because I can't do much now, I'm not going to stand in your way, but I still support you. Don't wait till you get old and wish you had it done. When you got good strength, do while you can. In other words, God said, work while it's day, because night is coming. And when night comes, no man, don't wait till you get 70, 80 years old, wish you had done something. Do it while you can. When I get 70 years old, I can't do what I can do now. I feel good. I'm going to feel good about myself. Because I went to Sunday school when I could. I went to Bible study. You ought to get to a place that you have a greater commitment to God. Listen, God was committed to you enough to give you the job that you had. He was committed enough for you to give you a roof over your head, put food on your table, clothes on your back, and the least you can do is give God some time. Is 4 hours a week too much for God? Is 2 hours a week too much for God? Listen, what if God just showed up to you as much as you showed up here? God needs some people that's going to be faithful even after failure. If you're willing to take a greater commitment to Him, God will take a greater interest in you. He called him to a greater commitment. He said, thrust out a little further in the deep. In the shallow water, moccasin hang out there. You know, everybody's scared of water moccasin. You know they hang out? In the shallow water, right close to the bank. Small fish, brills hang out there. Minnows hang out there. But if you want the big mouth bass,
you gotta go get him.
The big trout,
Gotta go get him.
something that can feed and provide for your family. You got to be willing to launch out in the deep. And some of us scared to go out in the deep because we look at our limitations.
Amen.
You know why we don't go in the deep? Because we can't swim.
That's right.
We don't like to go in deep water because we can't swim. But I found out if you relax in what you're afraid of, it'll hold you up. When you relax in what you can't hold, what you think gonna take you under, God will hold you up. That's why people can't swim, because they panic and they're afraid. But if you just relax in the deep water, it's easier to float in the deep end than it is in the shallow end. So Peter here launches out. He makes a reminder of a greater commitment to God. And because of his great commitment to God, God began to fill his nets. I want to tell you, this is not a point, but it's a good sub point. You got to see beyond your sea level. Not the sea level SEA, but SEE. You got to reach out beyond what you can see. So that's how God bless you. Peter began to look at his sea level and say, well, you know, I've been out here all night. But when you look beyond what you can see and trust God, God says, if you go out there one more time in the deep end, I see some stuff that you don't see. And God saw a full boat of net, a full net full of fish, not only enough for the boat, but enough for other boats. And because of you go beyond your sea level, and Dr. Fred Hayes, I heard it said, you got to be able to see more than what you can see. And that began to speak to me, because many times we only worship God on what we see. Point number 2, not only must we be willing to have a greater commitment after our failure, but be willing to have an intimate relationship with God. Look at verse number 8. It said, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. In other words, he fell down and realized he's not worthy of the blessing. He's not worthy of what God. In other words, he was getting intimate with God. See, this would not be the only time Peter had an encounter with Jesus on the boat and fish. Because at the end of John, he had another encounter with Jesus on the boat, and he didn't recognize who Jesus was. And the text said because he let him down again, the text said he took his clothes off and jumped in the water. Sometimes when we let God, it seems as if we have let God down, we give up on God. But in other words, if you have let God down and you still alive, you instead of giving up on God, you ought to just fall down and get intimate with him and say, thank you for giving me another chance. I don't deserve it, but because you God, you're able to bless me anyhow. Do I have anybody here that can say, I don't deserve it, but God has blessed me anyhow? Every now and then, your boat, you'll just look around and all the stuff that's in your boat, you don't deserve it, but you ought to just fall down at his feet and just say, God, I thank you. You ought to learn to get intimate with God and stop being so selfish and so arrogant, so boastful, and think God owe you something, and realize God don't owe you anything, but because he's God, he has blessed us with more than enough. Do I have anybody here that can just fall down and say, thank you for all the fish that I have in my boat? What are your fish? Your fish could be your job. Your fish could be your family. Your fish could be your life, health, and strength. When you look in your boat and all that God has done for you, you ought to get intimate with God and say, if nobody could do it, I know you were going to show up after a while. We see the effect of Peter, verse 8, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' feet and said, "Basically, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, O Lord." In other words, I don't deserve this. Say, I know some of y'all deserve it, but I don't deserve it. Peter allowed us to say, God, I don't deserve the blessing. But because he was intimate with God, God blessed him anyhow. So you don't have to know much, have much, just be intimate with God. And people start hating you for what you have, and you have what you have because God gave it to you. Do I have anybody have some haters here? And they hate on you because what God is doing for you and through you? So instead of getting mad and get with me and just give God some praise, you give him all the glory. And the more you give him glory, the more God will bless you. They see your glory, but they don't know your story. And because Peter was intimate with God, he no longer became a fisherman, but he became a fisher of men. The word catch is to bring out. He told him to go catch some fish. He wanted to bring out. And see, that's what we got to do. Be willing to bring out folks out of the world. And all we catch them is to be bait yourself. And see, when you go in the deep water, you got to even change your bait. That's the stuff we use one day, you can't use tomorrow. And the bait you use in shallow water, you got to change bait when you go to the deep end. If you want to catch big fish, you got to use big bait. I stopped by to tell you, name and claim is little bait. Amen. Calling and hauling is little bait. I need a God that can do more than just name and claim. I know some people get excited by the prosperity of what God can do, and he bless you with houses. Listen, God is a God bigger than just blessing folks with houses and land. I'm going to tell you, I got folks with houses that live in a nursing home. That's folks with wealth and money, but their children taking it out the bank. I thank God for life, health, and strength. My God is bigger than a name and claim. So if I don't have a dime to my name, I'm glad I still got a God in my life. So don't be thrilled or fooled by somebody coming to your town on TV talking about name and claiming. You better make sure you got a relationship, an intimate relationship with God. So Peter, he began to have intimate relationship with God, but he had to worship him. When you begin to worship God, it's different than just praising God. So any relationship with God, when you think about what the Lord has done for you, because of what he's done for you and what he can do. See, we worship God not for what he does, but we worship him because of who he is. And Peter realized that God was much greater than him, and he said, I'm a sinful man, please don't be in my presence. But I thank God that despite me, he still blessed me. Despite us, he still blessed us. And let me have that, despite you, he still have blessed you. But Peter was willing to have an intimate relationship after he failed all night long. I want you to understand that in the midst of your failure, if you have faith, God can turn some things around. Verse 9 through 11, we get point number 3. If we're going to have faith as a failure, we got to, there's a new call and realize there's a new life. You can't remain the same after your failure. Amen. When I was in seminary, I failed Revelation. I took it again, and I realized I had to change some things. The definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing, but expecting different results. And because I failed Revelation, it became one of my favorite books in the Bible. And see, some things you fail at, and you have to go back and redo. You realize you have a great appreciation for it the second time. What are you trying to say? When God has allowed you to make it through some stuff, there's some things you got to change. And not only does people have to change, the situation have to change, there's a time in your life that you have to change. I know we've been talking years and years, 100 years, talking about I wish they changed now and now, but let me serve you notice today, Tremont, things will be a little bit better if you change. It's not always everybody else, it's not always your wife, it's not always your husband, but every now and then, what would happen if you change? I wish I had somebody here that can say, I prayed that they changed, but because they didn't change, I ended up changing, and I found the peace of mind and actually good at night because there's a new way and there's a new life. And when God called Peter after he filled the boat with fish and caused his boat to sink, and other boats came over and filled their boat, and their boats began to sink. When they got to shore, Peter was not concerned about the fish anymore, but he dropped everything he had and started following Jesus. Do I have anybody here that realize God is still in the blessing business as long as I keep on following him? If I follow him, I know we got fish in the boat right now. There's enough fish in the boat for other boats, but if I can keep Jesus in my life, I can get fish anytime I get ready. When I got God in my life, I may fail, but God will give me another chance. When I have God in my life, I still got life after failure. I wish I had somebody here to testify, or just wave your hand and say, if you really knew my story, you wouldn't want to sit by me. I wish I had somebody here that say, if you really knew what I've been through, you would want to give me a high five, because I've been a failure all my life. But when I met Jesus and I began to launch out into the deep, I began to catch more than enough. I had more blessings than I had room for. He opened up the windows of heaven and poured me out a blessing that I didn't have room enough to receive. Do I have anybody here that know you have let God down and he gave you another chance? Do I have anybody here that can say, I messed up, but God loved me enough to pick me up and turn me around and place my feet on solid ground? There is hope after failure. There's joy after failure. There's peace after failure. Do I have anybody here that said, if you knew where I came from, you would shout for me? If you know what I've been through, you would shout for me. See, you look at the glory, but you don't know the story. See, some of you drive a Mercedes right now, drive a Cadillac, Rolls Royce, whatever it may be, but there was a time some of you had to catch the bus. There was a time some of you had to catch a ride. Some of you may be eating steak and shrimp, but there was a time all you had was bologna and a wish sandwich. You know the wish sandwich is. I wish I had some meat. I wish I had some ham, but thank God Almighty, he has brought you from a mighty long way. Do I have anybody here that thought you had failed at being a wife, failed at being a husband, but you put your hand in your marriage in God's hand and he turned that thing around? You can make it, but you got to keep your hands in God's hand. I stop by the chair. Say can't do nothing to you that God does not allow. So when I fall down, I'm gonna bounce back up. When I put in the grave, I'm getting ready to come back out, because the same God that I serve, Satan thought he had him when he put him in the grave. But after 3 days, the Bible said on Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. And it's just a tale. If he can get Jesus up, I know he can get me up. Do I have anybody here? No, God will get you up after you let him down. Don't give up, Tremont. Don't throw the towel, but let God guide your ship and take you out in the deep water. Commit yourself to God. Get intimate with God. Don't worry about what the crowd say, because the crowd can't do nothing for you. But the God I serve, he'll make ways out of no way. You gotta realize there's joy after failure, peace after failure, happiness after failure. But you got to stay connected to Jesus. But Brother Angel, I want to help the folks out, because sometimes we feel once we get saved, we won't fail no more. Nigga Park, I didn't put on my resume, but some of my biggest failure was after I got saved. It was after I had a relationship with God. And so you got to realize, it's sometimes after you know who God is that you mess up the worst. But Peter, he committed himself and said, I'm going to go out at your voice. He didn't know Jesus, but he launched out into the deep. Ask yourself, are you satisfied with the minnows in your life? Or you want a trophy catch?
Trophy catch.
Are you satisfied with just eating brim? See, people that catch brim, they brag about how big the brim are. But if anybody knows anything about fish, brim only get so big.
I eat a lot of them. I eat a lot.
You know how many brims you got to see if you want to invite me over?
A lot.
And so brims are so small, so Samuel, they're so small that you done ate the bone before you realize. They've been fried hard enough. But you got to launch out into the deep. Don't be content with the minnows. Because that's moccasins hanging out there. Snakes are eating us up because we close to the shoreline. But if you get out there in the deep water, you'll be surprised what you'll catch.
Yes, sir.
Launch out in your marriage. Launch out on your job. Launch out in your relationship with God. But you got to have a greater commitment. You got to be intimate and realize there's a new way of life. Give God a hand praise today.